Good morning, Starshine. As you can see, I am doing my October wrap up a little bit early, not only because am I running out of generic Halloween costume ideas, but I have a very busy end of the month ahead of me, and sadly, I don't think I'm going to have a lot more time for reading. So October was a really good reading month for me. It was a very, very long month, it seemed like. I've read probably the longest books I've read this year. So let's get started. The first one I picked to read this month was Thornhill, mainly because it is so beautiful, both on the inside and the outside. As I have told you before, it has lovely illustrations throughout. This one was just a really quick read for me, got my spirits way high for the month, in more ways than one. So Thornhill kind of threw me for a loop because I was really excited because I thought it would be a really good spooky book. I got into it and I was all like, oh man, this isn't really spooky at all. This is actually really heartwarming. I don't think it belongs in this month. And then it got back to spooky again. So I was very satisfied with it. This book takes place over two timelines. One in the past, where this house Thornhill used to be a sort of halfway home for girls, and it is told in journal entries, this part, from a girl who doesn't speak much. She had a horrible event happen in her life that just left her to where she just couldn't talk. It was kind of like a psychological muteness that she had to her. And it's her dealing with these horrible bullies and this one horrible, horrible girl in there. And then just trying to find someone she can relate to, a friend, something that she can not be upset about. And she makes dolls to be her friends, which once looking at them, like picture-wise, they are terrifying looking. I don't know, maybe I just don't like dolls, but that's what she uses to cope. And then the second story is told completely in pictures. That is from an unnamed girl, and she just moved to her new house in her new neighborhood, and that overlooks Thornhill, where in the past this other girl lived. And she starts seeing the ghost of this girl in the yard of it. So she tries to make some efforts to go to Thornhill and kind of find out what happened there. From the pictures, it seems like she is also very alone. I'm guessing something happened to her mother, and it's just her and her dad's very absent. So it's kind of a really beautiful story of just two souls over a long period of time finding common ground and finding each other when they're feeling very lonely. I won't say the ending. I was really satisfied with it. It's still a great Halloween book, even though it is very warm-hearted. It definitely still has a lot of creepy elements. The drawings themselves carry a spooky atmosphere, all being in shadows, and yeah, plenty of creepy dolls to look at, but I definitely recommend it. I think I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. So the next one I read, I am going to have a very, very hard time trying to explain. So I read this one with my book club, and that was House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielski. My gosh, this one was a journey. So kind of flipping through this, it's a long book, like it's pretty dense. It's like, one second, about 700 pages. But the way it's formatted, it's very weird because there's some pages that just barely have any writing on it, just like at the bottom, just like, and it's like pages and pages of just blankness. And then it just gets to regular story again, and then it has weird formats. It's all over the place. For some reason, I thought this was going to be a fast read because whenever I flipped through it, I saw a lot of like the mostly blank pages. So that was bad on me. This one took forever, but it was definitely worth it, I think. But it's about a house that a family moves into, as a lot of these haunted house stories starts, that they soon realize starts to expand a bit on the inside. It starts with like half an inch, like a small closet appearing, and like they measure the dimensions from the inside and the outside, and there's like half an inch off. And then next, like a huge freak in a hallway just appears, and it's just all dark. And what they do is they send expeditions in to go find out what's going on with this house. And it gets pretty ridiculous because it's a really long hallway, and then it's a really long hallway leading into this labyrinth, leading into like 100 miles long, like a spiral staircase going down. And I'm not gonna say much else other than that. That in itself freaked me out for some reason. Books really don't scare me at all, but this one kind of did. I don't know. I don't even know why. Like, there's not a lot of super scary elements in it whenever it comes to the house itself, but it freaked me out every time I opened like a closet or something. I was just like, oh. This is told in a weird format. As I have said before, the main character is a guy in Hollywood that found the story in a dead guy's apartment. The story itself is written by Zampano, who writes about the occurrence with the house, which actually writes about a documentary about the occurrence of the house. It turns out the documentary doesn't exist, and the guy who's compiling all of it is just this tattoo artist assistant living in, I think, LA. It tells his story at the same time because he's compiling it, so he has a lot of footnotes. So you get to know more of his story, and he's slowly going insane through all of it. I can't really say what I thought about this book. There were so many elements, some that I liked, some that I really disliked, and then some that I was just kind of bewildered by. I'll start with what I did like about this book. I think the author spent a lot of time and energy going into this and going into all of the research and the footnotes, and it's honestly something that would make all of my college professors super proud because every little thing is cited. I love the atmosphere. I love the main story with Zampano writing about the documentary about the house because I love the story with the house, with the family. You get some character studies with those, some a bit too in-depth, which is not something I would ever say. And the only thing I didn't like really was the other story of the guy compiling it that was told in footnotes. It's really weird. I love Chuck Palahniuk as a writer. He has a very gritty way of writing, life and the people, and like that part of it seemed kind of like a Chuck Palahniuk book. It's a super gritty atmosphere filled with drugs, filled with sex, filled with just, I don't know. In that area, none of the characters seemed very intriguing to me, even the main who's compiling all of this. And he does have a past. He has a very intriguing past, but his character in the present as he's writing this isn't very justified to me. And his spiral into insanity doesn't make as much sense. A lot of the conclusions he jumped to from it didn't make a lot of sense to me. But I really have to appreciate this book for the compilation that it is, for all of the hard work put into it. There are a lot of different things going on, and it's one of those ones you can go back and reread and still find something new, whether it be in the footnotes, whether it be in a reference to something else that you didn't notice before. It's definitely worth a reread. It's honestly worth like a college course on. It is so complex. A few people in my book club thought it was kind of pretentious and convoluted, but maybe I'm pretentious and convoluted because I really enjoyed reading this. I think I actually gave it a 4 out of 5 stars again. Okay, sorry, if you don't mind, I just gotta, sunglasses are supposed to help rest your eyes, but these are like a weird purple color that just makes everything look super weird, so I'm gonna put these away for now. The next book is my absolute favorite of the month. Maybe one of my favorites this year. It's definitely going to be high on the list, and I have 2 more months for something to conquer it as one of my favorites. But for now, this is going to be one of my favorites, and that is The Terror by Dan Simmons. This one is based off of a true story. It's about the 1845 Franklin expedition, which was one of the most prepared expeditions at the time. They got really great ships for it, the Terror and the, oh my gosh, and the other ship. Let's call it Ship B, because it's not as important. And they're on what should be like a 2-year expedition through the ice to find a passageway through the North Pole. It's like the last to be explored region at the time. So they've got these giant ice-breaking ships. They have enough food for 5 years. These guys are prepared. But whenever they're going through the North Pole, they get frozen in the water. And that's expected. They were prepared for that because it just gets so freaking cold. But what happens is the next summer it doesn't thaw. So they are literally stuck in this ice for like 2 years at a time. Not only that, one of the ships got damaged. Their provisions were going bad because they were canned wrong. All of the animals have just gone away. There is nothing to hunt. It is freezing. It is like 60 below in November. And what's happening is they can't touch any metal with bare hands. It'll rip your skin off. They cannot have any appendage free in the open air for more than 30 seconds. Otherwise, they'll instantly get frostbite. They'll have to get it amputated, or it'll just freeze all the way through and like crack off. It's ridiculous. There is a giant monster in the ice who is going through picking them off one by one. This is a great book, and it is just all a book about survival. It is all about the human spirit, the will to live. And it is just like 760 pages of these people just trying and trying and trying as more and more of them are dying off. There are a lot of great characters in this. Mainly, my favorite thing about it was just the beautiful descriptions. Everything is just white all the time. It is dark all the time because like winters are just dark. The sun doesn't come out at all. And it gives way for a perfect scary story. It goes into Eskimo legend, Eskimo folklore. Whenever it comes to the monster, it has a very well done ending, I think, that, I don't know, most people said came out of left field, but it wasn't what I was expecting. I was reading the entire book, like, kind of knowing how it was going to end, and it didn't at all end like that. So I loved that. Anyways, the most important part of this story is how scary it is. And everybody thinks that it's the monster that's the scariest part of it. No, children, it is not. Today, I'm going to talk to you about my new biggest fear, and that is scurvy. Scurvy is the worst possible thing you can get. So basically, with these guys, they're all bound to get scurvy. It was a really big, like, ship-faring disease that people would get. And it comes from not eating fresh food for a really long time. And like you could offset that really well with like lemons or oranges or citrus fruits. So what they did was they had a lot of lemon juice that they took with them and they'd drink a little bit every day. Well, apparently it starts losing its potency like after a year or so. So these guys go a whole year without fresh food and they start getting scurvy, which is a horrible disease where, okay, your teeth fall out, your gums turn black, your hair falls out, and then you start bleeding from every orifice. And not just from the fun orifices. I mean like your pores, your hair follicles, your eyes. It's, like this is 760 pages of just a bunch of old white guys dying of scurvy. And it was horrifying. I swear I told everyone in my life that they just have to eat fresh food. And they're just like, Kristen, scurvy is such an outdated thing now. And I'm like, man, you can still get it. And I was just eating oranges because my teeth just hurt the entire time reading this book. The ironic thing about this book is that literally everything else is killing these guys. Like the monster is the least terrifying part of it. It also ruined my dreams of wanting to be a pirate. I can't do scurvy. I can't be on the sea. Anyways, I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. It was just excellent. It's very rich in history, it's very rich in character and atmosphere, and like I can't think of one thing wrong with it. I definitely recommend it. It's a great read for Halloween. It's a great read for winter. I swear you will be bundling up the entire time and eating oranges. Eat fresh food, kids. So I feel like the whole first half of my month was dedicated to just those 2 books. So I didn't get to read everything on my TBR because very ambitious me was like, nah, I can knock all of these books out, no problem at all. I could not knock all of those books out, no problem at all. So I moved on to something a little shorter, and that was my Stephen King book of the month, which was The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. This one was interesting. It's a fairly short book about a girl who is on a hiking trip with her mom and her brother. Her mom and her brother start fighting. Her parents recently got a divorce, and that really puts a strain on everyone's relationship. She is always the one who's trying to keep things together, keep the family together, and like brighten things up a bit. Well, one day she just gets sick of it, and it's while they're hiking. The mother and the son are just fighting like crazy, and she just kind of goes off for a second to chill by herself. Actually, she goes off to pee, but you know, same thing. And she somehow gets mega lost from that. She is missing for like a week in these woods, and it's just her struggle for survival. Between the terror and this, I am fairly convinced that the scariest thing out there is just nature and being in it. So I'm gonna stay in here. As she's walking through, she starts hallucinating a little bit. She starts talking to different people in her life. She starts talking to Tom Gordon a lot, who is this baseball star she just loves. And then she starts seeing a monster who is chasing her down, who is like the god of the lost of the woods or whatever. It is very tense. It was an incredibly tense read. I think I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars though, mainly because of the lead. Stephen King is wonderful. He is such a great writer. He's really good with characters for the most part, but he does not know how to write from the point of view of a 9-year-old girl. It was incredibly awkward. A lot of the phrases he used were like really, really dated. But like she's saying all of these like catchy phrases throughout all of it. And I think Stephen King was trying to replace that with a personality, because she has all these great survival skills and she seems like a smart person, and then she's like wowza or Budweiser, and no one ever said Budweiser as like a catchphrase. I don't think so. Like, I was alive in the 90s, but he was trying, and I think he was trying too hard, and he let that get in the way of the character development a lot. The ending was well deserved. I liked that, but my main problem with it was just the characters. Everybody else he wrote was pretty good whenever it was talking about her dad, when it was talking about her mom, but it's just, she is so not believable. Also, I don't believe a 9-year-old girl could survive in the woods for that long. But that's beside the point. That's way beside the point. I like reading about a girl who does. So, I don't know, just too many catchphrases. I think this could be really good if not for that. And it may seem like a harsh thing to take 2 stars off for, but 2 stars for any of my stars in books always go to character. That's the most important thing. So, I'm sorry, Stephen King. I've loved you so far, but this is definitely not one I'm going to reread. The next ones I read, I'm not going to get too much into because I already did a long review on those with my last wine reading vlog, which I hope went well. But that was Dare to be Scared, Double Dare to be Scared. In each of these, there are 13. There are 13 short stories, and each of these all dealing with children dying in horrific ways for children. So I had issues with the first one, like quite a bit. It just was not paced well. It wasn't creative at times. It really wasn't good on characters. Honestly, neither of these were good on characters, but I don't know. I kind of gave it some leeway because they're short stories. You can't get too much into that. Besides, he was focusing more on the scares, which I could have forgiven if the scares were good. So the first one I didn't enjoy that much. The wine helped it a lot. The second one I thought was a lot better. It had better atmosphere to it, I think. Better story structure. But anyways, I think I gave this one a 2 out of 5 and then this one a 3 out of 5. But they were really fun reads. I wouldn't recommend it to any child ever, unless they want to see like kids getting their necks snapped, eaten alive by ants, torn to pieces, all of that stuff. And I wouldn't recommend them for adults either because they're so corny. They're so corny. I still did end up having fun with them because I love corny stuff. That's like one of my favorite things. But if you're ever wanting to read some short, spooky stories, I would definitely go for Goosebumps instead. Then the next one I read, I absolutely loved, and I knew I was going to love it, which is kind of why I read it, because I just kind of needed that after those two, and that was The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman, and Neil Gaiman is always a win in my book. I think I've said that a billion times already. But this one was really cool. It was basically The Jungle Book, but in a graveyard. In this one, you follow a boy named Nobody, whose parents are horrifically killed whenever he's a little baby by our mysterious villain, the man called Jack. During the murder, the little boy actually gets away and finds himself in a graveyard where he is taken up by the ghosts that live there and adopted. And they are trying desperately to keep him safe from the man called Jack, who needs to finish his business with killing nobody. And it is just a really wonderful story. It does have that as the overarching plot, but inside, like the Jungle Book, you do get a lot of little stories in there, just about him growing up in the graveyard and coming across all of these crazy misadventures and really cool characters. I think Neil Gaiman's Afterlife was done so well, and it was so beautiful, and all of the characters were really good. It was great hearing about the different ghosts. And the graveyard he gets adopted to is a really old graveyard. So he has people from like the Roman days he gets to talk to all the time, and he knows how to talk to people from different time periods. And Neil Gaiman writes this character as a very good mixture of all of those while still being sort of modern. Everything was very unique in its own way. I have never read a book like this, even after The Jungle Book. And it doesn't copy The Jungle Book either. It has a lot of alludes to it. It's more like an homage. And the ending, I think, was done really well. The lead becomes very resourceful in his time at the graveyard, and he is able to get himself out of some pretty sticky situations. This was a lot of fun. I definitely recommend it. Honestly, for any age. It does get a bit spooky, but like, it's a healthy kind of spooky. I definitely recommend it. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. So this brings me to the last book I have read recently, and that was The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. And I swear I have a new obsession. And as I've said before, the 1963 version of The Haunting, which is what is based off of this, is one of my favorite horror movies. It has the best atmosphere, it has the best acting, it has the best everything, and the book was a beautiful expansion on that. And even though this book was written in the 50s, it has a very fresh vibe to it. The characters all seem very modern. They're all likable and unlikable at the same time. They're very well-rounded. There's a lot of believability to it and a very just fresh tone, and like everyone's swanky and fun. But this one is basically about a doctor who is studying fear. So he gets a group of people to stay at Hill House for, I think it was originally intended to be 3 months, to study the things that go on. It's supposed to be a really haunted house, and it's showing the effects of fear on people in like a mob mentality. But it follows the lead, Eleanor, who is one of the people chosen. Her mother recently died. She had spent most of her life taking care of her mother, who was sick. And she is just excited for something to be happening to her for once, and to be around people who aren't her horrible family. And it follows her throughout the entire thing, where she is having a mental breakdown. Where reality gets skewed a bit, since we're seeing it through her eyes, we don't know whether or not the hauntings are really real or if she's going insane. And I think that adds to a really good atmosphere. There's a lot of tensions from a bunch of different people. It's a very short book, but it was still able to have all of the character development, all of the atmosphere, all of the beautiful plot devices that The Terror accomplished in 760 pages. But yeah, so good. I'm really excited to get more into her stuff. With that, that's all I read this month. I definitely wanted to get into more. I know I had Chuck Palahniuk and I had American Psycho on my list for the month, as well as a thriller mystery. I'm hopefully going to be getting to those in November, but November is going to be a tricky month for me because I'm going to be trying some new things, so bear with me there. That's another reason why I'm filming this so early, is because I have a lot planned for next month. So I'm excited to share that with you guys. I hope to see you again next week, where you'll get to see my sweet TBR for next month. So without further ado, because I tend to drag these outros out for a really long time for absolutely no reason, I just don't know how to stop, and anyways. I guess with that, I'll see you guys next week. Awkward outro.